Good evening. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Surya Chum, and I'm a part of the team that brings you Random House events. I have the great pleasure of hosting tonight's program, Open House Summer Escapes. I am so excited to see some new and familiar names in attendance and people tuning in from all over. For those of you who are first-timers to Open House, welcome. And those of you returning, welcome back. Open House is one of Random House's cornerstone events programs in which we invite you into our home and give you a taste of the incredible selection of wonderful books and authors that recently have come out or are just about to come out. The theme for this edition of Open House is Summer Escapes. Summer is right around the corner. I know the beach vacation, time for rest and relaxation is certainly on my mind and reading. And maybe safe to assume is on yours. And our hope tonight is to give you a taste of some of the exciting reads that are sure to best keep you company on your escape away if you've got plans already, or if you're planning to stick around wherever you are sure to take you on a great escape. For this open house, we're celebrating some of the great fiction reads and rom-coms of the summer. We hope that you discover your next favorite read tonight and that you enjoy hearing from our extraordinary authors. To preview our program, tonight we have a summer fiction panel with Alison Fairbrother, Janelle Brown, Fajardo-Anstine, and Clavis Nutera, moderated by Lindsay. A rom-com panel with Linda Holmes, Susie Dumond, Elissa Sussman, and Gia de Cadenet, in conversation with Lola of @LiteraryLola on TikTok. And concluding our program tonight, of course, is a special conversation with Dirty Dancing icon Jennifer Grey on her new memoir, Out of the Corner. I won't quite do justice to our authors' amazing credentials, so we encourage you to visit their full bios, which we'll be dropping into the chat. And we'll be dropping in the chat a link to tonight's gorgeous digital program, which also includes the authors' bios, as well as exclusive discounts to some awesome summer goodies from our partners. Before we get started, we have just a few housekeeping items to share. If you would like to turn on closed captions, please click live transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please note that these captions are auto-generated, so they may not exactly capture the conversations with complete accuracy, so please bear with us. Please also feel free to connect with other readers in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts, what you've been reading lately, your plans for the summer, and your excitement for tonight's event. We just ask that everyone please stay respectful. Also in the chat, Random House will be providing links to each of the authors' titles that are currently for sale if you'd like to add additional books to your beach bag. All books being sold during tonight's event are proudly fulfilled by our bookstore partner, Browse Around Books, based in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. The event is being recorded tonight, and a link to view the recording will be sent to you in the coming days, so you'll be able to enjoy the event all over again. We'd like to say a big thank you to our partners, Ample Hills, Effie's Paper, Espero, and Wander Beauty. We'll be giving away some goodies to a handful of lucky folks in the audience tonight who entered the giveaway and have been randomly picked before the event. Even if you're not one of our lucky winners tonight, you will still have access to a whole bunch of discounts, which again, are listed in the digital program. We'll also be dropping our partners' discount codes directly into the chat. Okay. Without further ado, it's time for our first panel focusing on the exciting summer fiction you don't want to miss out on. Moderating this panel is Lindsay, an attorney, media personality, podcaster, and the author of Miss Me With That. I am so pleased now to welcome Lindsay and our summer fiction panelists to our virtual stage.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I am so excited to be here. I am so excited to dive into this. I mean, there's such amazing authors that I get to talk to tonight and that you all will hear from. We're going to be diving into summer fiction, and I love that we're using the word escape, because I think we can all agree that's exactly what we need right now. And summer fiction is so great because you're taking these books with you for reading with the perfect setting, or maybe having the perfect drink, whatever that may be next to you, or just on your travels. So we're going to dive right in right now. And I'd love if we can start off with everyone introducing themselves and their novels. So please tell us about your book and what it's about. I'll just go ahead and kick this off. We'll take this around the Zoom. Let's start with Janelle Brown. If you could introduce yourself and your novel.
Hi, so nice to be here. It's great to be back at an open house. And thank you, Random House, for having me. And thank you, everyone. I wish I could see you. I'm missing everybody, but it's great to be here. And thank you, Rachel, for moderating this and my fellow panelists. I am the author of I'll Be You, which just came out 2 weeks ago, as well as 4 other books, including Pretty Things and Watch Me Disappear.
I love it. Let them know you have 4 more books as well. Thank you so much, Janelle. Next, we are going to welcome Clavis Nutera. If you can introduce yourself and your novel.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. My name is Clavis Nutera. I am the author of NERUDA on the Park, which will be out on May 24th. This is my first book, so good for you, Janelle. You're ahead of me by a few. But I'm so excited to tell you all about NERUDA on the Park. It's a book about an immigrant community in New York City and how a family deals with gentrification.
Thank you so much. Cannot wait to talk to you more about that. And next, let's go ahead and hear from colleague Fajardo-Anstine.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everybody. Hi, my fellow panelists. My name is Collie, and I am the author of Woman of Light. It'll be out next month. I'm also the author of Sabrina and Karina, but my new book, my debut novel, is a generational saga that spans 5 generations of an indigenous Chicano family in the American Southwest, and it focuses on Luz Lopez, who is a mystic and a seer, and she has visions. So I'm really excited to talk to you all tonight.
Okay, Luz sounds like the perfect person you wanted at a dinner party. Thank you so much for that. We're going to talk more about her, the protagonist in your story. And of course, I'd also like to welcome, last but not least, Alison Fairbrother.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Fairbrother. I am so happy and excited and honored to be here with all of you tonight. I'm the author of The Catch, which is my debut novel. It comes out on June 20th. And it's about a young investigative reporter living in Washington, D.C., who asks and tries to answer hard questions in the wake of her father's death.
All right. Okay. So your novels all include and touch on so many themes, and I'd love to hear more about your inspiration for them. So I'll go ahead and keep the same order going here. I'll start with Janelle. I'll Be You has so many fantastic elements. You got Hollywood, famous twins, and cults. Now, were there any real influencers behind these characters and events in your book?
Right. I realized I didn't actually introduce my book, which
I did it for you.
Problem with going first, you're not quite sure what the format is. So for those of you who don't know about the book, it is about twin sisters who were child actresses, think Olsen twins, that shared roles when they were growing up, shared acting roles. Much later in their lives, they are estranged. One of them's become an alcoholic mess. The other one's become a homemaker. And when the homemaker checks herself into a spa and kind of goes AWOL, the messy twin has to go figure out what's happened to her sister. Yes, she has gotten involved in a cult. So the real life inspirations, I mean, many of them. I've been fascinated with cults and with where wellness culture and cults kind of intersect, in that fine line between self-help and self-harm for a really long time. I mean, I watched everything there was to watch about Nexia and read all the books. And then on the flip side, on the twin stuff, I've been fascinated with twins for a really long time. My daughter is a child actress, not Olsen twin style. She likes musical theater, but there were kids in her troupe who were twins and were plucked out to be in a Marvel movie. And so I kind of have seen all this stuff up close for a while, and it all just synthesized in this book.
Janelle, you're going to have people like searching on the side, trying to figure out who it is that you're talking about here with these real life influencers. Definitely sounds interesting. I want to move on to Cleyvis. Now, of course, there are important themes in your book as well. NERUDA on the Park. You've got family dynamics, friendship, romance, community, and belonging, and gentrification, just to name a few. So could you discuss why you chose to explore these themes?
Well, for me, I mean, thank you for that question. And Janelle, your book sounds so good. I can't wait to get my hands on it, even though I don't have any vacations to go to. I'll just say that, you know, for me, I mean, the point of inspiration was really, first of all, to celebrate my family and my community. I was born in the Dominican Republic and I arrived in this country when I was 10 years old. Even though my life has taken me all over the world, I've traveled all over. Home to me continues to be just the best place to think about and dream about. So for me, honoring my home, honoring my community was really important. I also really thought a lot about mental health as a big theme. And so for me, you know, there's just every one of us, it's just, especially in the last 2 years, 3 years, have been through just so much. And so my characters are under a tremendous amount of pressure. Some of it is because of work in corporate America. Some of it is because of the pressures that happen in our communities. And so it was really important for me to excavate some of the challenges that we as women, and generally just everyone has within our communities, and think about what would it mean to confront trauma? What would it mean to heal?
Which is also right on time right now because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So not just summer fiction, but also right on time with what we're honoring and bringing awareness to this month too.
Absolutely.
Kali, Woman of Light. Now this is a tale about betrayal and love and fate. Can you talk about your inspiration for writing this novel and some of the research that you did?
Yeah. So this is the book that I feel like I was born to write. Like, this is my family story that I've gathered together in only the way that my imagination can, and I pulled it together into this novel. I've always been fascinated by family stories. I'm thinking of Mary Carr's The Liars Club, Isabel Allende's The House of Spirits. And I knew from the time I was a little girl that I wanted to grow up to become an author, and I wanted to share our stories of the American West. One of the big themes in this book is also women in poverty and our choices that we have to make in marriage and in love. And sometimes you don't get to be with the person you want to be with, especially if you're marrying for economics. One of the characters who's a super badass is Simuldicia Salazar Smith, and she's a sharpshooter. And her first love, I hope this is not a spoiler, but she ends up widowing herself essentially by killing him during a show. And for the rest of her life, she is plagued by this sadness. And we sort of watch that sadness fall out through all the generations of this book. So I really was thinking a lot about where I am in my life, but also where my mother came from, where my grandmother and my great-grandmother. I'm just really fascinated by generational stories.
No, absolutely. And I love that you said you were born to write this. I mean, that's a tease. That's the beginning of a trailer right there, which I have to say with every single one of these books, I can see it play out, you know, so maybe once we finish reading it, you know, we'll be watching it. I'm just going to go ahead and manifest that for everyone on the panel here. Alison, there are many themes in The Catch, which will, I feel, resonate with readers because it's about finding a way through grief and how we relate to our families and how we learn to define ourselves as adults. What inspired you, Alison, to write this story?
Yeah, The Catch is about a young woman going through this profound loss and a profound loss of a parent, and then entering the world right at that time of young adulthood when people often feel so adrift. I lost my own father when I was roughly Ellie's age in my early 20s. And this character isn't me, but I think what powers a book for me as a reader is a sense of truth. You know, you have to write what you're thinking about and what obsesses you. And I spent a long time thinking about what it meant to lose a parent right on the cusp of adulthood, which is a time of life that I'm fascinated by, you know, when you're finally kind of out on your own, living without your family. And it becomes this opportunity to reshape so many aspects of our identities that I think formerly felt fixed by our families. And you have to be really bold in order to do that. Your allegiance kind of has to be to the future and to who you want to become. So it's a really exciting time, but it's such a vulnerable time. And for Ellie, the main character, it becomes even more vulnerable and disruptive because her father dies the moment she goes off into the world. And so she has to do this work of figuring out who she wants to be while grieving. So she's sort of looking forward into the future, but at the same time, she's caught in the past. And I think grief is a really complicated, intense laboratory of feelings about the past.
Okay, so I want to build on what you were saying because I want to know, Alison, what do you mean by the title, The Catch? Even just listening to you in that description, it seems to have many meanings through the context of the book.
Oh, thank you so much for asking about the title. Ellie, the protagonist of the book, learns things about her father after he dies that really shock her. And she sort of realizes that there was a catch to her relationship with him, and she never knew it. So she kind of goes on a journey to learn more about him and ends up seeing that she had been sort of too busy, like idealizing him to see him as a full person, with his flaws and complications. And now that she has this new understanding of him, what should she do with it? Is she supposed to leave it there? Should she drop it, or should she kind of metaphorically catch it? I think we really only hold on to the things that we're ready to deal with, and we turn away from the ones that we don't or can't. And in the book, I was trying to play with these ideas of how there's a catch to having loved, because you have to accept the parts of love that even in retrospect, don't make you feel good. Or there's a catch to growing up in that you have to overcome your family despite being shaped by them. Or in Ellie's case, she's sort of drawn to a romantic partner that reminds her of certain aspects of her parents, which I hope it's not only me who feels that has been the case for them, So these were the kind of metaphorical meanings I was playing with. But on a more literal level, Ellie's father is a poet, and his most famous poem is called The Catch. And that poem is the first clue that the reader gets about who Ellie's father really was. So there's this catch within a catch within a catch. And I loved that kind of Russian doll quality to the title, that it had this sort of set of mysteries and surprises for the reader to uncover.
Wow. You guys thought you were just coming to hear about some new novels, some summer fiction. You didn't know that you were attending a therapy session at the same time. I just feel like each thing that you guys are talking about is hitting me in a different way. And I want to build on family histories, just pulling from what Alison was saying. And I want to move that into this conversation, this question with you. Colleague, your protagonist, Luce, is a tea leaf reader. She has visions that show her the history of her ancestors. Can you talk about how family history has influenced the way that you think about storytelling and how that translated into writing a novel?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I come from this enormous multicultural Wild West family that has now been in Denver for over 100 years. But on my maternal line, because I'm a descendant of people who are from the Pueblos in northern New Mexico, we've been in the American Southwest since time immemorial. But this book really began with the question of how did I become so multi-ethnic? And as America itself becomes more and more multi-ethnic, I really wanted to see myself reflected in books. So one day I remember distinctively, I went into the Western History and Genealogy Department of the Denver Public Library. And I said, I want to know how my Filipino great-grandfather met my indigenous Mexican great-grandmother. And they just looked at me blankly. They had no information, they had nothing to hand me. And I said, oh my God, I have to write this book. And so this book really came out of listening to the stories of my elders. My Auntie Lucy really was a tea leaf reader. She really did have visions. And it was about taking those stories, honoring them, and delivering them to you, my readers, and the world, because I want us to be seen, but I also want people to be entertained, and I want them to learn.
So fiction, though, with a history lesson, I feel like at the same time is what we're going to get. Now, Janelle, your book is a twisty and suspenseful page turner, but at its heart, we get into the minds of female characters and we understand why they do what they do. How did you get into their heads, and how do you keep all of these storylines straight?
Right. I mean, I think when I try to describe the kind of writing that I do, I generally try to say that I write books about people, women usually, who make bad decisions. And my job as an author is to try to understand why they make those decisions and to help readers empathize with the whole journey that they get there, that they take to get there. So to get into my characters' heads, the whole process is really just sitting down and starting to imagine this character and then spending time in their voice. It's kind of it's hard to describe what I do, really, how I get into it, but it's like it's one of those woo-woo things, right? You're like, I just feel this character, I just get to know them. And yes, there's the research. Like, for example, when I was working on this book, I did a lot of reading of Psychology Today, books about twin psychology, trying to understand what's the specific mindset that you have when you're twin, when you have someone who looks exactly like you. Talked to people who were twins or had children who are twins. I also did a lot of research into cults and wellness groups and why people join those, what about it appeals to characters, to people who join them. And then I just really tried to inhabit the characters that I'm creating, these two sisters, Ellie and Sam. I've got an Ellie in my book too, Alison. And then just try to figure out where I connect to them. Where's the place where I connect with them, and use that as a way to climb into their mind and get to understand why they made these decisions that they make.
Two Ellies. We might have a lot of Ellies in 2023. That's how you know. That's how you know people are reading the books. Speaking of female characters, Cleyvis, beyond the mother dynamic or mother-daughter dynamic in your book, women's relationships play a central role in the narrative. So how do these relationships fortify and challenge the main characters? And if you can discuss your own relationships with mentors and friends, and have they nourished and challenged you?
Well, thank you so much for that question. I mean, the first thing I'll say is that Callie, even though we don't know each other very well, like, she has been an inspiration to me. Like, I loved her first book, Sabrina and Corina. Woman of Light is like, I can't even wait. I keep telling people, they're like, stop talking about Callie, you're a stalker. So I'm just so excited to even be sharing this virtual space. And we both share like main character named Luz. So I also feel like our books are like related a little bit. You know, I've always been a big believer in the power of women, you know, to bind together, to collectively create change and inspire each other to be great. I also think relationships between women are really fraught. And what I have within my own life, I mean, in the book, you know, yes, the central relationship between Eusebia, who's the mother, and Luz is, I think, what drives the book. But Luz's relationships with her mentors, especially, I mean, Luz loses her job very early on in the book, and her mentor is trying to guide her to get her to break ceilings and become powerful. But at the same time, that's not really true to what Luz wants to do. And part of her struggle is trying to figure out how to have a life full of purpose. So for me, I really wanted to just to question and to meditate on what it means for us as women to be there for each other. What does it mean when we fall short? You know, because I think that happens a lot, whether we want to admit it or not. And I also wanted to dream of a place where we actually uplift each other. That's why the older women, Eusebia also is mentored by these older women. They're called the Tongues, and there's 3 of them. They're triplets, and they're just hilarious. They're gossips, but they are the holders of the history. And what they want to do in Natera Park, which is this immigrant community in New York City, is to protect it, to save it. And again, like, they mean well, but they are tending to lead their protege down the wrong path at times. And so does their protege, Eusebia, also take some really bad decisions. And so I'm interested in looking at the way women love on each other. I'm interested in looking at the way that women betray and hurt each other. And I'm hoping that it'll lead to conversations among all of us, you know, that lead us to become closer.
I think all of these books will lead to great conversation. And it's interesting because all 4 books are so different, but some of the themes and names seem to be overlapping, which I find really interesting. Now, this is a question for everyone. I want everyone to answer this, but what do you hope that readers take away from reading your book this summer? Or maybe you don't want them to take anything away in a specific way, you want it to be open for interpretation. I'm very curious. Janelle, I'll start with you.
That is always a hard question. What do I want people to take away? I mean, look, I write books that I like to be conversation pieces. I want people to really spend time thinking about the ideas and themes behind the book. Like in my book, there's themes of, hope, there's themes of religion, there's themes of alcoholism, big themes of sisterhood, but all kind of wrapped into this page turnery story. I really want people to ask themselves what are the things that they cling to that give them hope, and sometimes whether those things are always good for them or whether sometimes they are bad for them. And to ask that kind of provocative question about, like, looking around our society, what are the things that people believe in and why do they believe what they believe, and when is it maybe not the best thing to believe in?
So I got lost in it because I was thinking of reality for a second. Okay, back to the panel with the way that you're talking about hope. Cleyvis, what do you want readers to take away from reading your book this summer?
I just keep coming back to being swept away. I mean, this is a book that I wrote over 15 years of my life. I went from like not wanting to be married and not wanting kids to like be married and having kids. It's like a complete 360 in my whole life. And, I went through some really difficult times. I lost family members. I almost lost my son, who had to go through 2 bone marrow transplants. So I think that because of so much pain that I went through in my own life, when I came to this book, I came as an escape. And I wanted it to tackle a lot of like weighty and important issues, but I also wanted it to be delicious and sexy. So like the sex scenes had to be really sexy. Like the relationships, even though they're fraught, I wanted them to be funny. Like, so even though the book at times I feel like is tackling some issues that I feel like are really important to me that we should be talking about as a society, I just wanted like my readers to start reading and to not be able to put the book down.
I don't think they will. I really don't. And when they do, they'll pick up another book. Kali, can you tell us about what you want readers to take away from your book?
Well, first of all, I have to say, Cleyvis, I want our 2 Luces to meet someday. They have to be in the same room. With my book, I want people to learn. First and foremost, I want them to learn about America, about what this country is and how it was made and how it was formed. But I also want them to have very lively discussion about all of these characters. Some of them are going to make you pretty angry sometimes. Some of them are going to make you happy. And when I was in the midst of writing this book, it was deep in lockdown. I worked on it for 10 years. But when I was finishing it, I would come home and I would sit down to write, and they were my best friends. When I was with them, I had company, I was laughing out loud, sometimes I was crying, and I want my readers to have that feeling, to just be with these people, to have new friends, and to remember them maybe for the rest of your life.
I love that. I love that. And Alison, same question for you.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, The Catch is about a young woman discovering her power. And I think it turns out for Ellie that her power is in making different choices from her family. It's being able to sort of name the choices her parents made and the ways in which she was expected to live up to those kind of emotional inheritances, and then decide that other paths were better for her. So those are the kinds of questions around female power and agency and choice that I would love for readers to think about when reading The Catch.
Okay, I'm so glad that we took the time for you all to explain what it is you want us to take away. And I know everyone will get that and so much more. That's what's great about reading, is that it's open to interpretation. And so people will relate to your characters and your themes and the messages within all of it. Last question I want to ask everyone. We are here to celebrate summer escapes. So can you share what you're looking forward to reading this summer, or like what do you plan on reading? I've been doing so well with pointing out who should talk first. Let me get back on doing that right. Alison, I'll start with you.
I am obsessed with this short story writer named Danielle Evans, and I plan to reread her story collection, The Office of Historical Corrections, which is a big, weighty, sort of powerful look at race in America, but done through these beautiful emotional relationships. I can't recommend it more highly.
That sounds really good. Collie, and you?
I am almost finished reading Matt Johnson's Invisible Things. It's an incredible journey. It's science fiction, really funny. But I'm also in the midst of reading Willa Cather's O Pioneers. And the character of Alexandra, I can't get enough of her. And I can't believe it's taken me this long to read O Pioneers.
Because you want to stay with that character. I get it. I get it. Cleyvis, and you?
Yeah, I have to say, I love that Angie Cruz has a new book coming out. It's called How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water. And I actually read it and I'm rereading it. I mean, it was so moving, and like the structure is very challenging and complicated. And I just love that it like keeps you reading because you want to know what's going to happen. So I just want to put it on everybody's radar. It'll come at the end of the summer, but I can't wait to read it again.
Wow, rereading it again. That's a page turner then. And then last but not least, Janelle, for you, what are you reading this summer?
I'm just going to tell you a couple of the books I just bought yesterday, because that's usually a good harbinger of what's to come. I just picked up the new book by Vanessa Hua called Forbidden City. It's about Chairman Mao's mistress. I'm really excited to read that. I picked up Marrying the Ketchups by Jennifer Close, which also just came out the same day as mine. And that's supposed to be terrific. And I just pre-ordered the new book by Celia Lasky. I'm just going to look at, I ordered it now, I can't remember, they were So Happy For You, which is about a wedding gone awry. So those are the three books that are next on my list.
You know what I love is that everyone has a different book. So when you get finished reading these 4 wonderful novels of these amazing women, then they've given you your next read, or you'll find your next read in the next panel, because this concludes at the moment the summer fiction panel. And it will help us transition to the next segment. I want to help us transition to the next segment by saying, thank you, Janelle. Thank you, Cleyvis. Thank you, Collie. Thank you, Alison, so much for giving us a taste of your incredible books. I know I enjoyed them. I know everyone else will as well if they haven't already. And our next panel is a conversation about the wonderful rom-com reads of the summer. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you stay around. At this point, I'm going to pass the baton now to Lola, who will be joined by the authors coming out with some of the most romantic and comedic reads of the season. Over to you now, Lola.
Hi, my name is Lola. Thank you so much, Rachel. You may know me from TikTok. My user is @LiteraryLola. And tonight, I will be joined by the amazing authors, Linda Holmes, Susie Dumond, Elissa Sussman, and Gia D. Cadenet. Hi, ladies. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Hello, hello.
All righty. So as a primer, I would like to get basically a little snippet of what your book is like. So let's start with you, Susie. In your book, Queerly Beloved, Amy is a baker who has a close-up view of all the romance and mayhem involved in wedding planning. What is her dilemma, and what surprises does she find working in this environment?
Sure. So I'm Susie Dumond. My book, Queerly Beloved, came out just last week, so it's very fresh. And yes, the protagonist is Amy. She's a baker / bartender and a lesbian who lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2013, 2014. And she falls into this career as a bridesmaid for hire. So something that I really wanted to play with in that time period, especially, is how she's, involved in, she loves weddings. She loves celebrating love. She's so great at all of the, cake disasters that can happen and all the other things that you need when you're a bridesmaid for hire. But at the same time, I wanted to see how it feels for her, that tension of at the time when same-sex marriage is not legal. And she feels like she's intentionally excluded from this wedding industry. So I wanted, to have the feel-good, fun stuff of, baked goods and the fun hole-in-the-wall lesbian bar. But I also wanted to poke at some more serious issues too.
Oh, no, yeah, that's amazing. I think that that is a perfect dynamic of showing the like bright and joyous side of the world, but also showing the struggles that somebody can go through too as well. All righty, Miss Linda. In Flying Solo, I love the mission Luria goes on and the obstacles and opportunities she encounters along the way. Can you tell us about the adventure she goes on?
Yes. So Lori is a woman who has just turned, she's just about to turn 40, and she is cleaning out her great aunt's house, and she finds a wooden duck decoy in the bottom of a chest and decides that she wants to figure out what it is and whether it's valuable and why her aunt had it. And eventually that also turns into maybe losing track of it and then having to figure out how to get it back. So it has a little bit of heist in it and a little bit of caper in it. And at the same time, she's reconnecting with her best friend from childhood, because this is her hometown to which she's returned. Her best friend from childhood and also her first love, and who is the town librarian. So she is doing a lot of different things at once, but her adventure has to do with discovering the mystery of the duck.
That is so amazing. I really love that she has multiple journeys along the way and that she gets to encounter a bunch of different things throughout the book. It sounds really exciting. All righty, Miss Gia. In your book, Getting His Game Back does such a beautiful job of raising big questions, bold questions. What are the big questions Vanessa and Khalil are wrestling with?
So my book, Getting His Game Back, the big questions, it's about men's mental health and interracial relationships. The big issue is Khalil, the male lead, is struggling with depression. In the year prior to the beginning of the book, he goes through a depressive episode, but he thinks, okay, it's over, he's dealt with it. But as the depression comes creeping back, he doesn't want to deal with it again. And the other big issue is Vanessa's reluctance to enter an interracial relationship, even though Khalil ticks all the other boxes for the perfect man for her.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds like you cover a lot of interesting and very vital topics in today's society, especially right now, since it's Mental Health Awareness Month. That's beautiful. Thank you. And Elissa, in your book, Funny You Should Ask, it centers a big reunion. Can you tell us about the lead up to this reunion between Johnny and Gabe?
Sure. So Funny You Should Ask is about a journalist and a movie star who had an interview about 10 years ago and it went viral, and it's a dual timeline book. So we get to see the original meeting and then follow up with them 10 years later when their careers are in very different places. And the lead up is that Gabe, who 10 years ago was getting ready to be the first American James Bond, his career has kind of peaked and then crashed. And Hani, the journalist, her career is still on this upswing, and fate has kind of conspired to bring them back together.
Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. It sounds like the roles kind of flipped a little.
Yeah, exactly.
All of your books sound so awesome, and I'm really excited for everybody to check them out. But I was wondering, let's see. Okay, I love that all of your books have such strong, complex female protagonists at the center of all your stories. Self-discovery is a huge theme in all of your books. What are your characters searching for ultimately? The end goal?
I think for me, self-understanding, to be understood. A big thing for both my characters is that, well, for Vanessa, it's to be seen as an individual, not part of a mass.
Yes. I think that's a big one, especially with women, because in general, people like to group everybody into different societal groups, but to be seen as somebody who you are versus somebody as a collective whole is very important. How about you, Linda?
Excuse me. I think Lori is somebody who, it's interesting that Gia said, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
It's interesting that Gia said to be kind of understood, because I think I would say in most love stories, what people really want the most is to be genuinely known and understood. And I think that's true of Lori in this book as well. She sort of feels like, she canceled this wedding. She's about to be 40. It's partly that she's not sure whether it's kind of okay that she doesn't necessarily want to get married. And so she's kind of seeking some understanding on the part of other people of where she's coming from about the direction of her life. But she also really gets to a point where she wants to understand the story of this great aunt. She wants to understand the story because she feels like it's going to open up something for her if she can understand it. And she really does become kind of preoccupied by, if I can figure this out, if I can figure out what the truth is, it's going to be important, which is just one of those things that I think sometimes happens when you're in a moment of big questioning in your own life. You get sort of, well, if I can figure out this other thing, it's going to open up the truth about my big life questions if I can figure out this other thing. So I think she's quite obsessed with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's relatable to a lot of people, especially like when you're searching for something and you're on this journey of self-discovery and you have an idea that this path is going to lead you a certain way. I think we become real dependable on it and dive deep into it and focus, which is beautiful. All right, Susie, would you like to add this?
Sure. So Amy, we see right away, she's got all these customer service jobs. She is a people pleaser. Like she just wants everybody to like her and to do her job well. And she's really struggling with, if she's constantly changing herself to please the people around her, like who's the real Amy underneath it? And sometimes, being like a queer woman in Oklahoma, it's not always a safe place for her to be her full self. So I think she spends the book navigating a lot of different situations of how much of myself can I bring to this situation, and how can I find a place that is truthful and honest for me, but in like a community of people who love me for that. So I think a lot of hers is finding a way to please herself instead of other people.
Yeah, that's a big one. I know when it comes to people pleasing, you definitely fall into the second default position. And in order to put yourself first and truly become who you are and know who you are, I think that the journey along the way and finding and navigating the route for you to do it is very important. And that's awesome. Thank you for showing that in your story. All righty. And Elissa?
I think for Hani, it's that we get to see her at two different points in her life. At the first, she's 26 and kind of discovering her voice as a writer. And then at 36, 10 years later, she's kind of exploring how much she is beholden to that voice that she discovered and how much she's beholden to this particular article that kind of made her career. And is her value and the value of her as a writer and a journalist in her actual work and her actual talent, or is it because she wrote a very titillating, exciting, viral article that people read because they wanted to know if she had slept with a celebrity? And so it's a big question for her, has my success been received because I am talented, or is it because I can write something that people are excited about, maybe for the wrong reasons? So she's constantly grappling with that, which I think a lot of women in different areas do, but specifically creative women, I think. And if you have a forward-facing job or career, you have to sort of contend with a whole bunch of other factors that might be contributing to your success or your perceived success. So.
Yeah, I think that's a big one for sure, especially in career and whatnot for females and women in general, because we all have certain stories and everybody has their own way of life. And especially in your book, where the male essence is very prominent in her storyline. Sometimes you get clouded in between, and you want to make sure and project that, like, this is me, this is my success, and I guess own it and have everybody recognize it for you too. Okay, and next I am wondering, the romance genre is expanding and including all kinds of wonderful voices, and there seems to be a resurgence of the genre. How can you see it changing? And we will go off with Gia.
What I think is important in its expansion, maybe this sounds strange, is showing that everyone has the same story but differently. It's just to show that the themes are very similar but articulated in a different way. So just because it's a story with characters who come from identities that were not previously represented, the human experience is the same or similar. So for example, you know, Vanessa in my story, being a Black woman, she is going to come up against different challenges or different experiences, but at the end of the day, she's still a woman who, as Elissa said, is going to have, you know, experiences, people doubting her, people saying that, okay, is she really having this success because she's a woman in her field? You know, is it true success? Maybe even my current character Vanessa isn't a good example. My next book may be a better example because she's in politics, but a Black woman may have additional barriers, but she's still a woman. She's still going to be judged in the same way. In Susie's book, you have a queer woman who has additional barriers, but there's still going to be similitudes because she's a woman. So the opportunity in making sure that diverse voices are heard, we're still going to see that, granted, yes, they're diverse voices, but we as human beings share similar experiences. So I think it's important to have a diversity of voices, but in doing that, we're making sure to show that as people, we're different, but we're having a similar human experience.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing to point out because, like you said, like when you are from different groups or you represent a different, like a different aspect of people. So like say it's ethnic backgrounds or sexuality or whatnot, everybody has their own barriers, but you and I, or me and Susie, we will both share certain things as women that we can relate to on that level of that struggle. But also, like you said, for diversity, I think it is important to show that we are two different people and we are two different groups, but we will always be the same in a way because that's what brings people together. That's the human experience. So showing that through books, I think will help everybody in general recognize the bonding of diversity and whatnot. So thank you. That was beautiful. Susie, do you want to go off that one?
Absolutely. So I think that I'll start with the thing that I don't think will change in romance as we see more of it, is the happy ending. If you're not like as deeply entrenched in the romance world as some of us are, then you may not realize it. Like, it's a firm genre standard. If your book doesn't have a happy ending, it's not a romance. So I hope that sticks around because that's one of my favorite things about the genre. It's a warm hug when you know, starting off, no matter what this character goes through, they're going to find their happy ending. But I do think what I would like to see more of as romance as a genre is growing is like, I think that there's romance for everyone. I think people think that there's only one type of romance reader, but there's some slightly more serious romance. There's more fun and ridiculous romance. There's fantasy romance. There's horror romance. There's mystery romance. Like, I want to see all of the different forms that romance can take. And I think that that's a direction that we're headed.
Wow, that is so exciting. I really love that idea. I read all romance. I love all of the ones you listed. And to see those incorporated with rom-coms, especially like horror or mystery and like a rom-com setting, I think that would be so fun. That's a great one. Thank you, Susie. Linda? Oh, your mic. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Agree
No
with
worries.
everything that Gia and Susie said about diverse voices and about preserving, the endings. The one thing that the two things that I would call out, they're a little bit more specific that I mentioned because I was just thinking about this the other day while I was reading a book, is both are things that I see more and more in sex scenes, in love scenes, which is birth control and explicit consent. And more and more of the romances that I read, I think birth control discussions have been around for a little bit longer, but more and more I see more explicit consent come up in scenes in books. Mine definitely both have that. And it's really interesting to me that it's actually not that difficult to incorporate into a romantic scene. It actually doesn't put the brakes on anything. It can be absolutely part of what's going on in the scene. So that's just one very particular trend that I've seen in the books that I've been reading that I think is really lovely and positive. But other than that, I absolutely agree with the comments about diverse voices.
I love that. That's awesome. No, I agree. I would say in a few books recently that I've been reading too, I've been seeing incorporated as well. And just like in real life, I think it can be done very fluidly, and it does feel that way. It doesn't feel like a big jump. And to see it written also, I feel like is validating for women too, to know that that's something that should just genuinely be a said thing. So that's awesome. Thank you for pointing that out, because I too have realized that recently. And Elissa.
I agree with everything everyone has said. And to jump off of what Linda said in particular, I think especially something that feels very timely that we don't see in romance, we don't see in rom-coms at all, is we don't talk about abortion. And I think we need, where's the abortion rom-com? Like, let's start writing those books. We need to be normalizing it more and more. It is obviously something that is very important to millions of women and men. And I think there is so much space for the rom-com and romance community to discuss that issue and to show that you can talk about abortion in the rom-com world with a happily ever after. I think we desperately need that right now. And I hope we start seeing that.
Especially given how fond the genre traditionally has been of the surprise pregnancy.
Yes, exactly.
In many stories.
Yeah, I think there's so much space to, romance is all about playing with tropes and playing with existing, existing tropes. And that's a spin on it I don't think I've ever seen. So this is a call to everyone out there who writes and reads it. Like, let's do it. Let's start representing that more.
That is awesome. And I love that for women. I love that idea. I think, like you said, that is very important because for so long and still people have decided what we should and shouldn't be doing with our bodies, and to be able to talk about ourselves openly, especially with abortion, birth control, all of the things, to be able to talk about it openly and show that it is your choice and you can have a happy ending, and it is still impactful to men, but it is about us too, and showing that in romance that is something that doesn't have to be a horrible, scary thing, and that we can talk about it freely. I think that is beautiful to see it. And I think that if we can see it in a way that is also, I feel like it will be so empowering to even read it on paper, because with a lot of things, especially diversity in general, and experience, there's a lot of things that happen to us that we're not able to see in romance books. And whenever we're able to read it on paper, it becomes a lot less lonely in the real world. So I think those are beautiful points that all of you guys have made. Okay. In addition to that question, family and community plays a big role in your books. Can you tell us how your female leads view family and their communities? And we can start with you, Gia.
For in my book, the grandmother and her friend, a grandmother and her good friend, are extremely important for my female lead. My female lead also has two very good friends who offer very wise counsel. But nobody decides for my female lead. She decides on her own. So she does take counsel, but she decides on her own, which is fitting with her character. But I had a great deal of fun writing the grandmother and her friend as also women who are very strong, very opinionated, and have absolutely no problem expressing their thoughts. So they were a blast to write. And I was actually kind of sorry to see them go at the end of the book. I kind of wanted to continue spending time with them.
Sequel.
Right? You could do like an epilogue or an extended epilogue.
Well, actually, they were the epilogue. They were the epilogue.
That's amazing. That's awesome, though. No, yeah, I think that's awesome that she is able to have her own voice and her own opinions. But also, I feel like that's in a lot of people, because you can have your own idea straightforward, of course, but then you'll have, say, your friends or your mom or your aunt or your grandmother that will give you some counsel and you can hear it. But inevitably, you're going to do what you want to do. Of course, you'll take the word into account, but it's on you. But no, I can totally attest to the part where you said that you'll miss the characters when they're gone. Because that's one of the biggest things, especially in book hangovers. You kind of, sometimes you'll go back and reread your favorite parts because you don't want them to be gone yet. So thank you so much. All righty. Susie?
Queer found family is like a huge theme in my book. Amy, the protagonist, grows up a little light on close family. She's got her mom, who's always been very supportive and loving, but she's a single mom, and Amy's an only child. So she's really had to kind of like find the people who love and accept her and act as her family. So she has these like two of her mom's best friends who are like her gay uncles, basically, who have been there for her whole life. She's got this really tight-knit community at this gay bar where she works, and all of her friend group is there all the time. So I think it mirrors my experience that like sometimes your queer found family feels more like your family than your family. And that's something that I really wanted to reflect in the book and show, especially in a place like Tulsa, Oklahoma, that even though you may not realize what a like large and warm and like joy-filled queer community there is, it's absolutely there.
Oh, that's so pretty. That's so beautiful. Thank you. That's amazing. I think that found family is exceptionally important. And I feel like a lot of us have it. I'm also an only child. So I have my parents and I have my family, but I do have my own little found family. And they matter to me just as much as my regular family does. And especially in the book community too. I feel like that could be a found family in a sense, because I don't know about you, but a lot of people around me don't really read like that. So when you're able to enter the book world and find your people in general, wherever you are, I think that is a wonderful feeling, and you definitely feel more at home. All right, Linda?
My book has a lot. This book has a lot of family in it. It has to do with this bond between Lori and her great aunt. And even though her great aunt, whose name is Dot, is not alive during the basic body of the book, she's very much a big part of the book. Her personality, I think, looms very large. She was very independent. She lived by herself. She traveled. She had friends. She had boyfriends. So I think that relationship's very important. Lori also is somebody who really treasures her quiet and her own space, partly because she grew up in a very noisy family. She grew up with 4 brothers. And one of her brothers kind of shows up in the book with a kind of an assist, I'll say, in the heist and caper kind of stuff. So she's very close to her family, and is also kind of trying to figure out how to square the life that she wants with the kind of life she thought she would have based on the life that her parents have and brothers have. So, she's pulled in a couple of different directions, but she has a very loving family, and I enjoyed writing those characters a lot.
That's awesome. I feel like that representation in of family in general is very common amongst people, and I feel like the dynamic, a lot of people could relate to it. So thank you. And Elissa?
I think I played around with the idea of family a little bit in the book because Hani is not, especially when we meet her when she's 10 years later, when she's 36, she's kind of adrift. She has a friend, she's like a good friend at that point, but she's not the one with the sort of like solid family foundation. It's Gabe who has that. Gabe is the one who has a very strong relationship with his mother and his sister. And I really wanted to put that in the book as a way to kind of counter our ideas of masculinity. And, you know, I love romance and I've loved romance forever, but there's, you know, we're all steeped in the patriarchy, and it can sort of make its way into representation of male characters and what we find attractive and what we don't find attractive. And I really wanted to push back on the kind of stereotype of men as being emotionally closed off and having difficulty communicating, and having a character like Gabe who is so connected to his family and so emotionally available, kind of as a counter to Hani, who doesn't have that, and gave me an opportunity to really play a little with gender dynamics and sort of push back on what we think men should be and women should be in sort of stereotypical cisgender heterosexual relationships.
I feel like all the stereotypes and all those things that you mentioned, those are very like big things that are happening in today's society, and to have them witnessed in that setting is going to be really awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Susie, Linda, Lisa, and Gia for joining us. And I encourage everyone to get their hands on these beautiful authors' books. I am so pleased now to introduce our last panel of the night, which is a very special conversation with somebody I know you sure all know from the iconic movie Dirty Dancing, Jennifer Grey. Jennifer will be speaking with Jennifer Graza, VP and Director of Publicity and at Random House, and about Jennifer's extraordinary new memoir, Out of the Corner. Welcome, Jennifer Grey and Jennifer Graza. Have a nice one.
Hi, thank you so much, Lola. Hi,
Thank
Jen.
you, Lola. Jennifer, I'm so excited to be talking with you tonight. We're closing out our big open house night with you, and I think no better way. We've been listening to these amazing writers talk about strong women for most of the evening, and you are that. And this book you've written is amazing. Let's also say to everyone the great news that you are an official New York Times bestselling author. You just got that news today.
Yes, I mean, it hasn't even sunk in. It still feels so surreal. And it's a kind of like in the top of my head, and it hasn't dropped down to my other, like my limbic system or my heart, or I don't feel it. It's a little bit like a dream, because I feel so humbled to be in the presence of all of these incredible writers who are doing what I've been doing for the past couple of years for their whole life, or for a lot of their life. And I have so much respect, as I don't know, I guess a lot of people who are in the public eye who do memoirs don't write them themselves. And I actually had 2 attempts with ghostwriters who were both lovely people. I couldn't do it, and I stopped doing it, and I realized that there was no one who could tell the story but me, and it made me not want to write it, because I thought no one would believe that I could do this, and I didn't know I could do it. And the idea that you guys know how to structure a whole book, and you make, and the fiction, and you come up with new, like for me, all I did was just get down all of my memories, which were limited, very limited. I don't have tons of memories. And the editors would say to me, you have to write in scenes, and and it's like, I never went to college. I never even paid attention in high school. I read, but I don't read so much that I could learn to write from reading. And I just can't even believe how hard writing a book is, and how satisfying it is, and how I'm just so impressed with all of you. And I was listening to just the way you talk about your characters, and you talk about the themes, and I related to so much of what you all were saying. And I'm just so excited to look at your books now, and to read them, and to see, like, to get to know you better just from this little snapshot I got tonight. So thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you enjoyed hearing everyone. It was super inspiring, and your book is so inspiring too. And you say, that's interesting that you said, you know, your memories, and that you might not have had as many as you thought, but you paint such a vivid picture of your super interesting childhood, growing up in New York City, growing up in Los Angeles, making your way in Malibu, making your way kind of in this amazing family that you grew up with, of performers, of actors. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your life?
Yeah, I would love to. I knew that when I grew up, I knew that I was, by the way, it's really windy here. So if you hear things crashing, I'm safe, I think. It's just things are moving around outside. I knew that when I was born, I knew that I was lucky, and I knew that I was born into an unusual family, but their whole community was unusual in the sense that they were part of a very, very, very rarefied group of artists and writers and painters and choreographers and directors. And I was just surrounded by genius, not to even use that word lightly, like legit geniuses. And so I was very much steeped and rolling around in the brine of this very specific sensibility of people who read a lot, who cared about social justice a lot, and cared about, even though neither of my parents were, had any kind of advanced education, they believed in education, and they wanted to give me more education than they had been privileged to. They didn't have it. They were actors, and they were child actors, and it's a very specific thing. So I kept thinking, well, I know that I've had this weird life, and I know that it's lucky, and I know that I got to never missed a meal. I always ate really good, healthy food. I always got to go to a doctor if I needed a doctor, but I also got to go to the ballet a lot. And I saw every show on Broadway that was appropriate, specifically musicals. And I grew up around people like Stephen Sondheim and Hal Prince's, who directed the original Cabaret. My dad is named Joel Grey, and he's considered, he's one of the most iconic Broadway figures. And growing up, he was starting out. So I didn't think of him as being a legend or an icon. I just thought of him as being incredibly talented. And I was just awestruck by what I witnessed up close, what he would do, the transformation of him from like my handsome young dad to that just like a nefarious, sleazy master of ceremonies for Cabaret from when I was 6 till I was 8. And I never thought it was nefarious. I thought it was just his work look, and all the stuff of Cabaret, which would be like Nazi Germany and the decadence and anti-Semitism, and all of these heavy duty themes were very much like my bedtime stories. And they didn't feel heavy. Because it was great. The Candor and Ebb score was so incredible. And I would just listen to records in my room a lot. And I would just stare at the liner notes, and I'd study the photographs and stills from the shows and read everything and learn the lyrics and sing along and have like little bits of costume. And I just knew that it was not like that in other people's homes. And I knew that when I went to Malibu was very, in the 1969, 70, 71, it was very, very undeveloped. And it was not at all shishi or Hollywood or fancy. And it was funky, but it was cool.
It seems very free-spirited. You guys were just doing your thing.
Yeah, we were like, caftans on the beach and parades. Yeah. It was very like hippie. It was early 70s. And there were people who were actors, but actors didn't feel like celebrities to me. They just felt like my parents' friends. And I thought of acting as just like a good job. And I just thought, well, I need to do that clearly, because I didn't know anyone who had a real job, or I didn't even know people who weren't having success as actors. I don't know why I didn't see the reality. I didn't see how painful it would be or could be. I didn't know what it was like to be anyone other than a child witnessing a mother who'd had a successful career until she got married. She was doing very well and really talented and considered very, very up and coming her whole life, and was moving up. And then I knew that my mom, when she became a mom, stopped working. And then I started realizing, oh, so that's the only person I knew who didn't get to have her dream come true. And at the same time, she would sing all the songs from Gypsy, and she would sing to me all the time. And there was a lot of opera in the house. It was a lot of culture. So I grew up in a very special place. And it never occurred to me to write about it because I don't remember scenes, but I have a synesthetic memory, which I did research while I was writing. I was doing a lot of research about my own brain. I was researching about different kinds of memories and how somebody who didn't have a traumatic per se childhood have so little memory of early life. And I had such a happy life. It didn't make sense. And I couldn't make sense of it. And so I would do a lot of research as I was writing about, did I remember this correctly? What year was this? Oh, was I still a virgin when that was happening? I could look up shows because I have these little like tent poles of like, oh, I watched Rocky Horror. Okay, when did Rocky Horror come out? Okay, so when did I move to 9th grade? And so I was doing a lot of timelines because it was just like a crazy, crazy quilt of memories. But the memories, when I look at photographs, I have tons of Polaroids because my dad is still a great photographer, but he photographed everything. And so we have boxes and boxes of these little Polaroids. And I would look at the Polaroid and I would remember my mom's nightie that I would wear and tie up the shoulders so it could fit me. I look at the lace, I remember the lace around the neck, or I remember the texture of the chocolate wide wale corduroy fancy dress that I wore for the holidays, and the kind of crocheted, whatever it was, off-white lace. But I can't tell you a scene from my life at all. So I just thought it was, how am I going to write a book without a ghostwriter, without any formal education as to how to write or having even taken workshops or anything? So I just wrote every memory I could think of. And then when I started to write about, well, I know I visited my dad on matinees. That was my favorite, to go hang out with him backstage on a Saturday matinee doing cabaret, like when I was 6 to 8. So I know those years because I would have to look up what year did it open, or, how long. Okay, he did the movie in Germany when I was in 69. So I was 9, and then I was 10 when we moved to Malibu, and 10 or 11 when it came out, and I was living in, I could just have to place things. But I had Google as my research because I had a lot of, my grandfather also was very, very well known as, his name was Mickey Katz. It was my dad's dad. And he has a lot of material on him as this, he would be like the Weird Al Yankovic, but do the Yiddish parody of pop songs, so that Americans who were immigrants who would come to the States and had fled Eastern Europe, in my family's case, Ukraine and other places in Eastern Europe, they would basically assimilate. They would drop their name, they would drop their nose, and they would drop these things that would identify them as Jewish, or how to assimilate to be part of the mainstream of America. And then Mickey, my grandfather, was this incredible bridge because he would lean into his Jewishness, and he would take popular songs like Davy Crockett and turn it into David Crockett. And then he would Yiddishize everything so that people could not feel homesick for what they'd left behind and feel like they could be a hybrid of their old self and this new life. And also, these are all the things that I started to untangle when I started to write it, because I knew that there was something very deep and familial about my nose job and the attention it got, and why I didn't want to have it, and why my parents had it, and what it means to be an American, and what it means to be beautiful, and the fight to hold on to my God-given everything and to decide that my talent was going to win over and I wouldn't have to capitulate. So those are the things I was wrestling with, because I knew I was telling a bigger story than Dirty Dancing, but I knew that Dirty Dancing and I had a lot in common with what it is to be a Jewish girl growing up in the 1960s in America.
You've said before, you know, like so many of us who love the movie, love Dirty Dancing, we saw ourselves in your character in Baby. And I love when you write about, you're so honest about the plastic surgery and the nose jobs and how people wouldn't recognize you and how that felt. And was it because that we saw ourselves in you and what happened, you know?
Well, I don't know, like I reference that in the book as part of my my queries about how did this happen in my life? How did this confluence of events happen to somebody who had a good sense of themselves, who felt pretty enough, who didn't want to take away her Jewishness, who become a star with her own nose and being herself? And I was just so committed to never, I thought it was the ultimate betrayal to do my nose. And then I realized I couldn't get a job after I was already the star of a giant movie with my nose as I was. And I kept trying to figure out why there seemed to be this, like, it was before we called it cancel culture. But there was a version of that happened to me. And it happened to me because I certainly didn't ask for it or look for it or even deserve it, because people, I think, treated me as if I hated my Jewishness or I wanted to be like everyone else. And that was anyone who knows me, anyone who's I mean, I have the same friends for my whole life. Nobody has ever thought that. We all know we're all trying to do the best with what we've got, you know, and if I have to wear a push-up bra, I'll wear a push-up bra. And if I'm just trying to love myself my whole life, just like how much can I not, you know, how much can I not sleep with the enemy? How much can I just hold on to myself and to be treated as if I was someone who I'm probably have had the least amount of plastic surgery of anybody that I know. And to be accused of something wrongly was so frustrating because I couldn't move there was like a feeling in the zeitgeist. It was just bigger than me. And I could talk about it. I could try to act myself in TV series where I was playing myself and I would just try to laugh about it and just deal with it head on and nothing would budge. And I thought, oh, I'm just trying to make sense of something that made no sense to me. Is it because I was a girl who they felt they identified with, like that every man, every woman thing of like, oh, she's like me. She can get the guy, even though she's not, doesn't look like her sister. Even though she doesn't look like the girls on covers of magazines, that this Adonis saw something in her and was attracted to something in her in spite of, or because of, or it was irrelevant about what she looked like or what she thought of herself. Like just the idea of like what, I believe it was, I think she's left us because it's very late where she is, but Cadenet,
right, Gia.
Was talking like, yeah, Gia Cadenet was talking about, you know, just like being a Black woman or someone talking about being a queer woman. It's like, what is that thing about me that makes me feel other? What is that thing about me that is keeping me from being loved by everyone? Well, you'll never be loved by everyone. But what is that thing that I find unlovable? And how can I either really cleave to it or work with it or not, like, or cut off my nose despite my face, or like is that written for me? Like, what is that phrase? Like the idea of people have always done slight adjustments to their nose to make themselves more photogenic. It's just savvy, especially in a business where you're being photographed all the time and you want to play a variety of roles. So to me, there was no sin in my desire to, like, it was just very painful for me to do it. And then to have had the initial nose job be so successful and prove my mom right and prove that voice right of like, you know what? It's just give yourself a little more, a broader base to with which to make a living, to get other jobs, to be able to do what I love, to be a place where I could have my talent, you know, I could use my gift. And I was just locked out. And I was like, how can I be locked out? You're supposed to just get the hit movie and then you're going to get all the jobs because you're a proven person. And that didn't happen. So then it became really, I was thinking about just the loneliness of what it feels like to be struggling with your own challenges and how it feels like no one's ever felt like you do, and that how incredible books are for exactly that reason.
Right.
And to feel so seen or connected and to not need somebody outside of yourself to validate who you are. And you can just recognize someone in a book or recognize these shards of humanity that we share. And when I was writing the book, I was like, I don't know if you've never been the star of Dirty Dancing and you've maybe never, you know, danced with Patrick Swayze, but maybe you have felt like you just weren't enough in whatever regard. And then what if you didn't join them? What if you didn't join them in the betrayal of your value or worth? And I thought, well, who doesn't relate to that? And I don't know, I'm sorry, I just go off sometimes when I'm.
No, I love it. I could listen to you all night. It's true. It's what the writers earlier were talking about, you know, reading to feel less alone. And
exactly right.
So even if readers can't relate, like you said, dancing with Patrick Swayze, it's, we all relate to this feeling of being alone or feeling other or feeling sad, you know,
or wanting to be rescued.
Or, yeah.
Oh man,
or
if I
wanting
could
to
just
do
get
it.
that job, or if I could just get that money, or if I could just be on the best-selling author list.
Right.
You know, like all those things that seem to be these externals that we've been taught or we've been conditioned to believe will fix us. I say with quotation marks. And there's nothing to fix because we are not broken. We do not need fixing, but maybe give us that little, like, you know, plaster over those fissures to just give us the feeling of being a little bit less fragmented, a little more whole, a little less broken. And it's only temporary.
It's such a beautiful memoir for young women. You know, I think it's when I was reading it, I was thinking a lot about my friends my age, but also younger women too, and what, you know, what you kind of learn as you grow older and how you reflect back on life. But this book, you also dish, and there's some really fun stuff about Hollywood and loves that you've had and loves lost. So you really kind of put it all in one great gift for us. So
nice.
Talk a little bit about, we only have like 5 minutes. So
I mean, honestly, I wish I could have not used any of those people's names. And I'm sure that Random House would not have been as excited about my book if I didn't have those bold-faced names. But the truth was, for me personally, it was the hardest and worst part of this book, because I have this, like we were talking, you guys were talking, I was listening about this deep systemic people pleasing. This deep desire to not, you know, ruffle feathers or hurt people or have people displeased with me because of how threatening it has always felt to me. And the idea of people that I loved, you know, everyone in this book that's mentioned, I loved at some point, really loved. And the idea is not that they did anything wrong. I mean, they didn't do everything right either, but neither did I. And what I was doing, there's a woman named Barbara Jones who I had hired as my editor, a freelance editor at one point. And she helped me so much because I trusted her so much. What I said was, she knew everything was written before I came to anyone. Like I was just like, wow, I had like 500 pages, just like crazy, unwieldy dumping, because I had stuff that wanted to be worked through and that I had been struggling with for years. And so it's just different stages of dump, right?
Yeah.
And I just trusted her as a person because I knew that she was not working for Random House, and I knew that she was not going to, she understood my codependency. She understood my desire to sleep at night and to be kind And she was, I couldn't have done it without her, because she would say, just be the just God of the page. You are the just God of the page. Let's expect, like, just give everyone the benefit of the doubt and just state the facts as you see them, because this is your story and you have a right to tell it. And that to me is the real gift. It's not the New York Times bestselling list, although it's freaking fantastic. And I hope it means that more people will read it, because I then think, well, maybe more people will feel less alone, or feel like they got some wisdom from someone who's not their mother, you know, because we all know we can't teach our kids, but maybe somebody else's pain. And to just know that being alive is painful and messy, and being in love and being young is, whoa, it's so messy, it's so painful, it's so overwhelming. And it was for me. And I was extremely throwing myself out of planes a lot emotionally, because of just how I was wired. And it wasn't that I was trying to be with bold-faced names, but I grew up around them. And so it would make sense that I would be wired to be attracted to talent and charisma. And then I just started looking at everything that happened to me, like more like a scientist or like a journalist, kind of. I don't know. That makes sense. That's understandable why you would be attracted to that person, and why you would stay longer, and why, well, based on your family and what was modeled for you, regardless of what you've been told. And so I just thought, if I can get this out as truly to my core, as true to myself as I can, perhaps it would be a valuable thing to leave for my daughter, so that she could have less mystery and more understanding of why I was and am the way I am, which might help her have less unconscious questions about things she would feel, because we all know we feel so much more than we're told or shown. And that it might be a nice kind of user's manual.
I love that. You also end the book talking about how you think it's important for everyone to write their story, get their story down, you know?
It's just because especially if you type really slowly, like me with these two fingers, I type the entire book with these two fingers. I can't use a computer. I'm technologically super, I'm really not good, okay? So it really forced me to be slow, and being slow forced me to consider, is this a fact, or is this a story that I've inherited, or I've been telling so long that I think it's true, and kind of vetting it and pushing on it and asking myself why, and then assuming responsibility that that's what I deserved, or that was how I chose to live my life, that no one did anything to me. You know, stuff happens to all of us, but who's going to rescue me? Nobody.
Right. Right. You talk about the
and
choices.
We can do that. Yes.
Yeah. You talk about the choices you made, getting yourself out of the corner, you know, a nod to the title of your memoir. Well, it's so fun. And I recommend it to everyone. I think we'll bring Saria on stage here in a minute, but Jennifer, tell us, can you leave the listeners tonight with a little bit about the Dirty Dancing sequel that's in the works?
I'm not really at liberty to say much, but I will tell you what I can, which is very new information. We just got to announce yesterday that Jonathan Levine is going to be directing. He's a wonderful director, and he also has co-written it. And I believe that it will take place at Kellerman's, it will take place in the 90s. And I will play Baby, and I will be Baby 35 years after that. Like, it was 63 and this will be 90, so about 30 years later. And it will involve dancing and music and romance, and like they were talking about the rom-coms, you know, happy endings.
Yeah.
With the suspended disbelief of like, I hope this will end well, even though we know it will. It's an incredible way to take someone on a journey, and still knowing that they're on a Ferris wheel, but they're feeling like they're falling through the sky. I don't know, you know, you're going to get out of the Ferris wheel, but you get to like have the experience of not knowing.
Oh, well, that sounds amazing. I know that we all cannot wait for that. I'm seeing people in the chat. Yep, sounds incredible. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for joining us, for closing out our night, for writing a beautiful memoir. Everyone go get it. It's so fun, so inspiring.
I'm just
And
so proud of every one of us who has written a book. It's
I
so
know.
hard and so it's lonely, but it's so nice to write it by yourself and then to have to put it in the world. That's a whole other thing. Like
I'm
to me,
sure.
I'd rather be alone writing, wouldn't you all? Like the whole thing of like, then all of a sudden you've got people to deal with. Like when I'm writing, I'm just rewriting and constantly rewriting. It's just easier than being in the world, isn't it? The world according to me and my opinion about my own self.
That makes a lot of sense. Saria, should I kick it back over to you?
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Jen and Jennifer, for
Thank
a
you, Jen.
wonderful conversation. To echo Jen, we can't wait for the follow-up to Dirty Dancing. And for those of you who haven't read Out of the Corner, you are in for a real treat. And thank you to each and every one of our wonderful panelists, our summer fiction panelists, our rom-com panelists, for sharing a bit about their truly amazing books. And thank you to everyone for coming out to Random House's open house, Summer Escapes. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our authors about their wonderful books as much as I have. Such a diverse selection of truly remarkable, funny, romantic, moving, and inspiring books. I'm thrilled personally to have a summer reading list set to go. Before we say goodbye, I just want to say a quick shout out again to our wonderful partners, Ample Hills, Effie's Paper, Espro, and Wonder Beauty for supplying some remarkable discounts for you all, and of course for making our giveaways possible tonight, which I am pleased to announce right now. The winner, I hope you're listening, the winner of a goodie bag of assorted stationery products from Effie's Paper is Rebecca Monroe. Again, the winner of assorted stationery products from Effie's Paper is Rebecca Monroe. The winner of a sleek black 32-ounce Espro P7 French press from Espro is Pat Emanuel. Pat Emanuel, you've just won yourself a new sleek French press. The winner of an assortment of summer beauty products from Wonder Beauty is Jenny Galani. Jenny Galani, you've won an assortment of summer beauty products from Wonder Beauty. And lastly, but not least, the winner of the Party in a Box pack from Ample Hills Creamery, which comes with everything you need to host your own Ample Hills event, which includes 6 pints of ice cream, decorations, party hats, balloons, candles, and more is, drumroll please, Randy Jackson. Congratulations to you all. I hope you enjoy these goodies, which are great things to have to kick off your summer onto the right track. We'll be in touch via email with the giveaway winners to facilitate shipment of your prizes. And one last thank you again to our terrific bookstore partner, Browse About Books. We hope you make a visit to Browse About if you're in the Rehoboth Beach area this summer. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's program, and please have a sunny, safe, and fun summer filled with lots of reading. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next open house, take care.